Today on Sports Central, I'll be going over our next NFL final prediction of this offseason, and it will be over the Green Bay Packers. And this is a team that went 13-3 in the regular season, of course, in 2019. They also made it to the NFC Championship game. Overall, great season for the Packers, and they're a big surprise team, too. No one really expected them to be as good as they were, but nonetheless, with Aaron Rodgers, really anything is possible with this team. And today we're going to be going over whether or not this team can make it to the Super Bowl in 2020, as well as your record prediction, along with a full preview and your returning production in the process. Yeah, with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019 for the Packers. Of course, they were 14-4 overall. They had a 13-3 record during the regular season for 2019. Their season trends, in between September and October, this team was 7-1, and then they were 7-3 between November and the postseason. So overall, this is a very consistent team all season long. They did have a couple of losses later on, but then again, I'd say their schedule got progressively tougher as the season went on. Some of your key wins, this team actually had a lot of really good ones. Of course, they beat the Cowboys in Dallas 34-24, and they led for the majority of that game. So, I mean, for the Cowboys, that was not a very good game on the Dallas side. They did beat the Chiefs in Kansas City as well, 31-24. I think their biggest win of the season was against the Giants in New York, 31-13. And they also had a good win against the Vikings on the road, 23-10. So once again, lots of really good wins for the Packers last season. They also had a big wild card win against the Seahawks, 28-23. They got the win there, and that's what set up the NFC Championship game matchup between the Packers and the 49ers. With that, let's look at your returning production for next season. They returned their star quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, of course. And, yeah, there's been a lot of controversy around him this offseason so far. Of course, Jordan Love was drafted by the Packers in the first round of this draft, and that was a big surprise to pretty much everyone, including myself. I mean, for Aaron Rodgers, he's still a really great quarterback. It's not like he's declining at all, and he's still got a ton of talent, no doubt. And so it was really surprising for me, especially to see the Packers go with Jordan Love. And basically for Aaron Rodgers, I mean, that basically gets rid of Rodgers within the next couple of seasons. Of course, his contract will be up within a couple of seasons. So it just baffles me. I mean, of course, I created a reaction video to that after he was drafted. And man, yeah, that just really surprised me for them to draft basically Aaron Rodgers' replacement a few years before he's even going to retire. So once again, that was a bit surprising, but they do return their top running back, Aaron Jones, as well. That's going to be huge. Aaron Jones, of course, was a great running back last season, one of the best in the league. He had nearly 1,600 yards with 19 touchdowns last season. And also, yeah, Aaron Rodgers, we didn't get to his stats yet. He had just over 4,000 yards with 26 touchdowns and 4 interceptions last season. So, yeah, back to Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he put up some great stats last season. His touchdown and interception ratio was great. He only had 4 interceptions all of last season. And for an NFL season that is really long, I mean, for a college quarterback, 4 interceptions would be, I mean, that'd be a great that'd be honestly a great stat to have. I mean, most college quarterbacks that are starting full-time usually get right around 10. So for Aaron Rodgers to have only 4, once again, it just baffles me that they draft his replacement when he's still in his prime. But yeah, they also add their running back out of Boston College and A.J. Dillon. He was drafted this a couple months ago. And of course, A.J. Dillon is out of Boston College, and he had a pretty good season last season. So I do expect him to have a good part of this offense. Of course, they also return their second running back in Jamal Williams. So it will be interesting to see which running back will get more attention between A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams heading into 2020. They also return their top receiver, Davante Adams, and he's one of the best receivers in the NFL, I would consider. He had nearly 1,000 yards with 5 touchdowns last season, too. They also returned their wide receiver 2s and 3s with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Alan Lazard, and of course both of those receivers were also big parts of this team last season. They had right around 500 yards apiece with 5 combined touchdowns. They also lose their tight end, Jimmy Graham. Of course, he was traded into the Packers this previous offseason, and so now he's no longer with the team heading into 2020. They also lose their right tackle, Bulaga, along with linebacker Martinez and their cornerback, Williams. So they do lose a couple of players on the defense, of course, with Martinez and Williams, and especially Martinez. He was a great player for this team last season. So I definitely think that for the Packers, that linebacking position could be in a little bit of a deep situation. Of course, they lost Clay Matthews the season before this season, so I mean the linebacking situation is not looking very good either. So I mean you got a lot of question marks on that defense, but nonetheless, they also add in the receiver Devin Funchess. He's coming in from Carolina, so that's going to be good for Aaron Rodgers to have. Of course, Funchess has been a little bit of an inconsistent receiver though, so that is something that does concern me a bit. Once again, they also add in their quarterback Jordan Love. He was their first-round draft pick. Will Green Bay be a national contender is the main question for this team. Of course, last season they were 13-3, made it all the way to the NFC Championship game, and this was a big national contender, of course, with Aaron Rodgers. Once again, he's a great quarterback, one of the best in the nation, I would presume. And so for them, it just makes me concerned to see them have to draft their replacement for Aaron Rodgers already. I mean, we don't know how that's going to affect the motivation for Aaron Rodgers in general. I'd expect him to probably be more fired up about it and have a good season, but then again, it's really tough to say right now. But either way, I do expect the Packers to be a good team next season. I'm not quite sure if they'll go 13-3 again in the regular season, but I do expect them to have a good season in general. I would expect at least 10 wins for this team next season. Speaking of which, moving on to your schedule for next year, you start off the season at Minnesota on September 13th, followed by a game against the Lions in Lambeau. Then you got a really tough matchup at the Saints, and that's going to be a big matchup, especially in the NFC. I mean, that could have really some big long-term implications for sure. Then you got the Falcons on October 5th, followed by the Buccaneers on the 18th. And the good thing is about that Buccaneers game, you do have them on the road. However, you do have a bye week before that one. So for the Buccaneers, of course, being a team that now has Tom Brady, they could easily be a league-wide contender next season. So that's going to be a very important game for Aaron Rodgers especially, to get a big win over Tom Brady again. Then you get the Texans on the 25th in Houston, followed by a game against the Vikings at home. And then you got the 49ers on the road. And of course, the Packers were not, two of their losses from last season came against the 49ers, and both times it was in San Francisco. Of course, they lost in the regular season to them in a blowout loss, and they also lost in the NFC Championship game, also in San Francisco. So that'll be an interesting matchup there as well. And then you get the Jaguars on the 15th at home, followed by a trip to Indianapolis. Then you get the Bears and the Eagles both at home, followed by a trip to Detroit. And then you got Panthers and Titans both at home. And then your last game of your regular season will come on January 3rd against the Bears on the road. So yeah, with that, let's look at your first half of your schedule. I'm going to give you a 6-2 record through your first 8 games. I think you beat the Vikings and the Lions to start off the season. And that Vikings game, especially to start off the season, that one was basically a toss-up for me to predict. Of course, Minnesota is always really good at home. They've got a great home field advantage. And for the Vikings, of course, I think for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, I think he's going to be really motivated going into that first game. So I think he gets the win there. I think they also beat the Lions on the 20th, followed by a loss to the Saints on the road. And that's a tough one. I think with it being in New Orleans, which is a place that probably has the best home field advantage in the entire league. I mean, you could roughly say that. I mean, there's a lot of great stadiums that have some great home field advantages, but the Saints definitely have one of the best in the league. And so with them having to go on the road, and it's going to be a big game considering it's at the beginning of the season. So, yeah, it's tough to say right now, but I think the Packers do take a loss in that one. Yeah, I think you'll get wins against the Falcons, and the good thing for Aaron Rodgers and this team is that they're going to get a win at Tampa Bay. Of course, that's going to be a big, important game for both quarterbacks in that situation. Of course, we already thought we saw the final matchup between Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady a couple seasons ago when the Packers traveled to New England, but turns out that is not the final matchup. We'll have it this season, it seems like. But yeah, that'll be a big game for both sides. However, I do think they take a loss the next week against the Texans. I think you prepared too much for that Buccaneers game and then the Texans game the following week. Either way, I still think the Texans are going to have a great season. I mean, they could easily be a 10-11 win team next season. So I still think that's going to be a tough one, but I just don't think you'll win 2 big road games in a row. I think you did get a win against the Vikings on November 1st, followed by another win, another big one against the 49ers on the road. Of course, coming into that game, the 49ers have a really tough stretch of games. I mean, that November is absolutely brutal for the 49ers. So I think the Packers already have an advantage there. And plus, I mean, this Packers team is going to be fired up for that 49ers game, I'd assume. I mean, you lost at that place 2 times last season, and one of them cost you a trip to the Super Bowl. So I think the Packers are going to be super motivated there. I think they get a big win at the 49ers on November 5th. As far as the second half of your season goes, I also think you'll go 6-2 in your final 8 games. I think you get a win against the Jaguars, followed by a loss in Indianapolis to the Colts, followed by a win to the Bears, and then another loss to the Eagles at home. That will be your only home loss next season, is to the Philadelphia Eagles. And, I mean, as far as your December goes, really you don't have that many tough games. I mean, I'm sure most Packer fans will want to win that Eagles game, but pretty much everyone takes a weird loss at home at some point during this season, so I decided that it will probably be the Eagles. It just makes sense, of course, coming off of a tough Colts game, and then, of course, having to play the Eagles, which the Eagles are another team that I do expect to be pretty good next season. But yeah, either way, as far as your December goes, I think you win your last 4 games, and that includes 2 big division games against the Lions and the Bears, both on the road, and along with a Panthers and a Titans game. So yeah, with that, your record prediction for next season will be 12-4. That is still a very good record in my opinion. I mean, 12-4 it's not as good as 13-3, but still for the Packers next season, I think that they could definitely do some big damage in the NFC, and I do also expect them to win their division. I think this NFC North division could honestly be a toss-up for anyone going into 2020. Of course, the Vikings are looking pretty good, but they do lose Stephon Diggs, and of course that offense in general isn't very good. And then if Dalvin Cook's holding out too, you can't forget about that. So I mean, they're kind of a toss-up. And then you get the Bears, which is a team with Mitchell Trubisky. I don't really think that they've got enough talent there. And then the Lions, I mean, hey, don't sleep on the Lions. I mean, I know it sounds crazy right now, but if Matthew Stafford is healthy for the majority of the season, if he recovers from his back injury, that Lions team could be a big threat in that NFC North. I mean, if you look back, I mean, I hate to talk about the Lions in a Packers preview, but I mean, if you look back at the beginning of the season, that team was looking really good before Matthew Stafford got injured. Once he got injured, that Lions team was absolutely horrible. But when he was healthy, I mean, the Lions did look pretty good, so you can't forget about that. But nonetheless, back to the Packers. Your prediction stats will be 7-1 at home. Your only loss at home will be to the Eagles, and your away record will be 5-3. So that's where your other 3 losses are. As far as your division stats, I think that this team actually goes undefeated in the division, and I think as far as the conference goes, you go 10-2. So yeah, with that about wraps up our final prediction on the Packers. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team. If you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it, subscribe as well. Really helps out the channel, and I'd really appreciate that a ton. But yeah, once again, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I will see you all later.